All
Are
right.
we are we online?
Yeah, we are live, dude.
Oh my gosh, it is happening.
It is happening,
That is
dude.
incredible.
That is cool. So
Miracle of science.
there we go. We got you. And people can even see that we got the
Yes.
little thing going on. So
Aha.
I don't know what happened. What's up, Professor Kapaya? Okay, so this is going to be the first episode of Legends Lounge, talk show where we talk about all things Elder Scrolls Legends. And we are both the hosts, talking both Major Broski and Dead Broke Nerd. This first episode is going to be about the Frostspark collection and everything going on so far. So, Dead Broke Nerd, just in general, kind of talk about what are the overall thing about the talk show. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah. So like what we're doing here is trying to sort of include the basic announcements and help people keep in touch with what's going on in the community in the game, both on the competitive scene and sort of on the casual scene as well. So we'll be going over important announcements at the beginning of each episode. We'll also be hoping to focus this podcast on sort of different aspects each week. So sometimes it might be tips and tricks for free to play players or new players. Sometimes it might be strategies for different game modes like arena or some of the chaotic uh, weekend events. Sometimes even discussion on DLC and other things like that. So that's kind of the general idea. So each week we'll have a theme.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to make this talk show a little bit more unique. We were kind of talking about that. We notice a lot of people don't really get into the specifics. They're kind of informal going about everything. So we're trying to make this a little bit more formal. That isn't to say that we can't joke around every now and then, but we do kind of lose that. Oh,
I believe I went out for a second, but I'm back. One of my settings went off.
okay. Well, I lost you. So let's see about bringing
should
you
be
back.
should be
Oh
back
no.
in here soon.
Oh no. That's not good. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay.
Oh,
Can hear but
beautiful.
can't see. Oh, we got him back. Okay. It was just kind of being weird. So,
Yes, there we go.
okay.
Okay,
Well, we got you back. So,
beautiful.
technical difficulties. Beautiful thing about doing things of the internet. So, we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end. So, right now we're just gonna kind of talk through everything because we will be uploading this to YouTube later. Dead Broke Nerd will get that. So, we're going to have to keep the questions towards the end of the video and kind of keeping the discussion among the audience. That isn't to say that you guys aren't a part of the show. We love you guys here. We want you guys here, but to kind of keep things away from confusion, we'll go on ahead and end things towards the end of the stream for the Q&A. Like I said earlier, this specific episode will be about Frostfall. Oh, excuse me, Frostspark, because the copyright got changed. Wow.
Classic.
Anyways,
I preferred
Frostspark.
I preferred Frosty Pants for the record.
Okay, so Frosty Pants, and yeah, we will be the episode the DLC, excuse me, was released on November 1st, so we are exactly 7 days since its release. This is with our new developer Sparky Pants. In order to kind of shake things up, it's in response to the current meta, things like conscription, Televani, things like that. So anyways, yeah. So anything that you want to add on to that note?
Yeah, there was a pretty big content drought for a while. So in comparison, I think I saw something on Reddit the other day that was talking about all the cards released in the past 2 years for Elder Scrolls, and then their biggest competitors. So actually now a competitor, Eternal, and Hearthstone, and Eternal and Hearthstone had like double the new cards that Elder Scrolls Legends has, and I know that that's a point of emphasis for Sparky Pants. So even though they have this Shivering Isle set that is coming out someday, we still haven't heard an announcement, which indicates it's at least 2 to 3 months out. So this is sort of like showing the community that they are bridging the gap a little bit with these smaller sets. I think it's a great idea, and I'd love to see these smaller sets come out, more often. Easier to test, easier to implement in the game. So I think it's good as long as they keep it coming.
Yeah. So let's go ahead, dive straight into the episode. We'll be talking about the set, but As we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the chat box. We'll open it back up for the for the for the end for the Q&A. We're gonna be asking some primary questions as we're going through these cards, and we'll be kind of making notes on the side. The questions will say, how does the card respond to the current meta? What do we, or what do you think the purpose of this card is supposed to fulfill, as in what type of deck slash playstyle? And what are some of the reactions thought to week coming in? Does it do what you thought it was going to do? If not, how so? Both Dead Broke Nerd and I did a YouTube video explaining our thoughts, like the day before and the day of when it came out. And both of us got some things right, and both of us got some things wrong. So now we're about a week in, and we can actually see some of the reaction to that. Unfortunately, hold up, let me go take care of something real quick on my end for my computer. Excuse me.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, I mean, I just to fill the time here. One of the things that I've seen people talk about this collection is they were really hoping that it would sort of shift the meta in general. I am not seeing that in particular. I think it's really adding some new experimental aspects, and outside of one particular card, which we'll definitely talk about, and at a great extent, I'm sure, there's a lot of cards that I think are more casual play centric. So I'm really hoping to see in the future a little bit more focus on themes across these expansions. I mean, imagine something like Factotums, right? Where in the Clockwork City expansion, we had the Factotum sort of synergy, and a lot of new cards were based around that. Imagine that in an 11 card set where each color got 2 cards that worked off of a theme. So each color combination, so a dual color deck or a tricolor deck would have 4 cards or even 6 new cards that would all work together in a theme. That's one way to really enforce just a brand new archetype to the game. I would like to see that maybe come across a little bit more in the future. That's just one thought I have, because I'm looking at this set, and even though it's really fun and there's definitely some new cards, new decks, and synergies, I think it's really just improvements or variations on the same decks that we've been seeing. I'm not really seeing a whole lot of brand new, entirely out of the box, crazy things, at least none that are really good right now.
Right. So let's go straight into the Frost. What would you call it? Frosty Pants?
Frosty Pants.
Frosty Pants. Let's go straight into
the. Should have called it.
I know, for real. Let's go straight into Frosty Pants. And the first card we have was one of the cards that I was the most excited about. Which, let me go ahead and pull it up. Right here we have Piercing Twilight. So, I was excited for this card. I honestly think that Bethesda, CVH, they kind of like this. This is the first card that they announced, and I think that they thought that this was going to be the best card. I mean, I don't really know, but the way that they hyped it up, I mean, it just has so much coming in for it, right? It's a 4/4/4. It has guard. You could summon it, choose a card in your opponent's deck to banish. It's a way to kind of respond to the current meta. Everybody was kind of excited about this. So let's go ahead and answer some of the questions here. The first question being, how does this card respond to the current meta? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it really does, at least not the way perhaps it was intended. My theory is that this card was intended to bring mid-range back into the game. Now, this might see some play in mid Battle Mage. I have not seen any mid Battle Mage that have played it, just in my experience, but it's viable in mid Battle Mage and not really in a whole lot else right now, because I think it is intended to sort of counter the stuff that purple likes to do with their graveyard. So Ojin or a Necromancer, and it sort of also really harms conscription. What we're seeing instead is it being utilized in Telvanni, in these control Telvanni decks, to obliterate their worst matchups, genuinely other control decks, right? And so it's instead reinforced the Telvanni conscription shenanigans that nobody really wants to play against. At least in my experience, I've seen so many Telvanni decks, like, not only removing their control opponents' tools, but also removing specific aggro decks tools that counter them. So one person's Withered Hand Cultist ends up in the grave. As soon as that happens, boom, Piercing Twilight comes down and removes not just that Withered Hand Cultist, but all the other Withered Hand Cultists and similar things. They can basically use it as a method to look at what their opponent's doing and blow it up. And because of their insane amount of card draw in Telvanni and their mana ramp, dropping a 4-mana 4/4 with guard is pretty efficient for them, whereas it's not as efficient for an aggro deck. And I think you actually have talked a little bit about your expectations with it in Sorcerer and how you weren't quite as happy with it.
Yeah, so I was kind of if anybody's been watching me stream, I made a mid Sorc deck, and I was kind of excited when this came out because one of the biggest issues for a Sorcerer deck is aggressive decks, and number 2, yellow. And even though the yellow takes a long time to build up, you have to remember that yellow has Edict of Azura, Piercing Javelin, and Cast into Time. Those 3 cards can really slow down the tempo of a mid Sorc, because the purpose of a mid Sorc is to get your cards out by round 4 or round 5 to do that heavy damage to the face. But yellow has those cards at round 5 that can start getting rid of my cards. So it's very frustrating because I'll drop my 5/5 Bleak Coast Troll, bam, he's gone. So I was yeah.
Yeah, and especially because those cards that you're talking about, Edict and Javelin and Cast in Time, they all go around the biggest thing that Sorcerer has, which is all those ward creatures. Normally, things that do damage, they have to go through two effects to get through it, and those yellow removal spells and the Spell Sword one and Edict allows them to sort of skip through that, and that's definitely a problem for Sorcerer. I agree.
Yeah, and so I'll be honest, my expectations for this was kind of like, I was super excited when this card first got announced because I was like, yes, I can finally get rid of this. But the issue is, by the time I get it, I'm only handling one of the problems. So if they would have dropped Piercing Javelin, then I was able to get rid of Piercing Javelin, but it still doesn't handle the issue of Edict of Azura, and it just doesn't handle the issue of Cast into Time, which they still have in a deck, which is six other cards, and that's not including the cards that they probably already have in hand by this turn. So yeah, it didn't really respond the way that I thought it would, and like you said, it's kind of, instead of working against the meta, it's actually supporting it, which was somewhat of a huge disappointment, and I don't really know if they had expected that to happen when this card got released.
Yeah, it's hard to know for the card designers, and I can't blame them. I do really like this card. I think it's an elegant design. I personally hate deck destruction, but I do like graveyard destruction because at least people have already played it. I wouldn't mind seeing some more easy to play, and like this card is definitely, if you are intent on graveyard destruction, this card allows you to do it while still getting a 4/4 guard down, as opposed to the 5-drop the Wraith, Memory Wraith, and that one without guard in a slower matchup, it actually doesn't really have an impact on a board in which you're losing, whereas Piercing Twilight's guard does. So, but yeah, it's a cool card. I'm just a little disappointed it's not doing better at killing the dreaded Telvanni.
Oh yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next card right here. We have Apex Wolf. Yeah, so just my first thoughts whenever this card first got released, I was like, cool. It has, the first thing that my eyes caught on was Breakthrough and Drain, and my eyes went straight there. I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then the second thing I noticed was it's a 6-drop. And I was like, oh gosh, this is really expensive for what it is. And I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this because I have not made a yellow deck, not for a while anyways, and I don't really know how it would work with the other wolves, but you've said even beforehand and even now it's not really that good of a card.
Yeah, it's still bad. I said it was bad in the video. It's still bad. I know there are people playing around with wonky combo decks and trying to make it work, but I mean, and that's cool. And there's definitely some funny. I think Justin Larson, I think Charmer has been playing around with it. It's funny, but it's like trying to win with a hand tied behind your back as opposed to a card that actually helps you win. So it doesn't work with the wolf synergies because it's too high cost. I mean, Pack Leader, the 4-mana 4/4 that pilfers and summons another wolf, it's so much better than this, and they have the same stats. And Apex Wolf is 2 more. It's a bad card. I think I was very disappointed.
I think if it was like a 6/6 and it was a 5/5, it would be worth considering. I don't think it would be. I think the 4/4 is kind of the thing that, for me, just looking at this and seeing how other people play, there are other. By the time you drop a 6 card, your opponent already has 4/4s on the field, and it's not
There's
responding to that. It's not even breaking through anything.
and the last gasp, like you have to wait on the effect. I mean, in this is a game that's moved past last gasp decks. Like there used to be decks based around last gasp, and like they don't exist anymore because you need cards that have an immediate impact. You need a summon effect, like you need a passive effect, something that is going to make an immediate impact. And last gasp has to be extraordinary in order for it to see play.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. So not responding to the current meta because it's not responding to anything. I mean, it's still a really bad card.
I think every single person that has played this card so far, and I felt bad doing it because I wish it was better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen it, like, I've played against somebody else, and it's always frustrating having a Drain card on the field. And I'm not going to say it didn't do damage to me. I mean, it did, because, I mean, Drain really sucks, and any of the decks that I play, like Mid-Sork, my aggro decks, like, it's frustrating to deal with. But at the same time, that doesn't, just because it's effective doesn't mean it's actually effective.
It's just inefficient. It's just bad use of your mana.
I think inefficient's a better way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
Next card up, we have Shadow Marking. Oh my gosh, this card. What are your thoughts, dude? I love it.
Oh, I really like it. I was concerned about it in terms of a power level, and I think that was the main thing that I got wrong. I was very concerned that this would see like ridiculous amounts of play really early to allow like already heavy cycle decks to cycle even further. That doesn't seem to be this way. Although I've really liked playing it so far. I think it's a balanced card. I think it's a card that is enabling some more silly combo decks. I've been playing around with a Monk Market deck. It's not very good, but I think that's it more to it being Monk. I would play this in a Archer Market deck, and I'm pretty sure this would. And someday I'm going to get around to making that Market Archer deck again. I think this would work really, really well in it. So I really like it. I'm glad that it has not become the scary super cycle combo wombo combo enabler, at least not yet. I haven't seen it yet, so
maybe it should have been called Shadow Marketing.
Yes, it's so good in marketing. Okay, that's all.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, and I really like. I think it's really, really cool because for a 3-drop, you're drawing 2 cards out of your deck, and I just think that's cool. I can't even think of anything else that's this cheap that you can do that with. I don't know. I mean, you got your Pifflers, and you got other cards that down the road you can draw other cards. Even Mudcrab Merchant, you could drop that. That's pretty early, but it only allows you 1, and you're still giving 1 to your opponent. This one allows you to put 1 into your opponent's hand, but you gain 2, which I think is I think that's just really awesome.
I think it's cool design. I think it's not super powerful, but if your goal is to draw a ton of cards, it's accomplishing that. But it's also giving your opponent a resource, and I think that's a good payoff. I think it's different than other things that are out there right now. I think it's an elegant design. I like the card. I don't think the card is broken, and I was concerned that it was going to enable some stupid stuff, and so far that's not the case.
Right. Next card up, we have Torvell, Extortionist. One thing that I would want to say is, as much as I've Frosty Pants has been out for a week, I've only seen this card used once. And other people may have come across it a lot more, but oddly enough, in both my aggro deck and my Mid-Sork, the time that I've spent on the ladder, I've only seen it once. And it's a great card, so I'm surprised it hasn't been seeing a lot more action. So as far as my experience with it, I don't really have a whole lot, because I'm expecting other people to have used it and see how it used effectively against me, and I don't see why. Because especially for my Mid-Sork deck, and I said this during my video, if I drop my Black Orb Necromancer, that's a 6-drop. Even though it's a 4/4, Torvell Extortionist kills it, and he's still alive. Now he's a 7/1, right? And then guess what? Now you have an extra 6 mana, so that you're looking at about 12 mana by round 6, which is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, I've seen this guy a bit. You're right. I haven't seen him as much as I expected to. I think that has more to do with it being the beginning of the season than anything else, right? Because I think people are like, oh, it's the beginning of the season, I got to grind up, the ladder. And I think a lot of people are sort of focusing more on the things that they know and they can trust. I have not seen as much experimentation as I would have liked. I'm a little disappointed because I've been heavily experimenting with a lot of things, and of course not moving up the ladder accordingly because I've been running into all the same, aggro warrior and Telvanni, conscription. And I'm not blaming people for that, but there's the type of people that when the new set comes down, they immediately go to experiment. There's the type of people that immediately prey on those people by playing the best meta decks because those other decks aren't tuned yet. This card is great. I really think this card is amazing. But when I have seen it, when it has been played, it has been very tough to deal with. Interestingly, I think that it's one of the best uses for it. One is in Dagoth, right, where it comes down on 5. It's aggressive. It's going to feed into your later game stuff. If you get a kill on it on turn 6 and you kill a 4-drop, you can immediately drop a 10-drop or a 9-drop. Like you could drop Aspect of Hearsay after getting a kill with this. That's pretty dope, and that happened to me, unfortunately. But what another cool use of it is actually to bite removal for your Child of Hearsay in a Slay deck, in a Slay Archer deck, or a Slay Scout deck, or something like that. I guess it wouldn't be Scout, then it would be whatever the one with red is. But doesn't matter. But Torvell Extortionist coming down on 5 is immediately going to bite removal because you can't let it live, right? Which frees up your 6-drop to come down with less of a chance of your opponent having efficient removal for it. And so I was actually getting screwed on a Slay Archer deck because I dropped a Piercing Javelin on 5 to counter the Extortionist, and then when the Child of Hearsay came down, I was like, oh crap, right on curve, there's Child of Hearsay, and I just used my Piercing Javelin. And Child of Hearsay, of course, is that card that allows Slay Archer to get its wombo combo of, getting to attack face 3 or 4 times in a row due to the Slay effect on it. So, this card's great. I'm sure we'll see more of it once people get up to the place that they're happy with on the ladder and begin to experiment as well.
Just to say what we've already said, I'm surprised that people aren't even using it now. I mean, I understand that people want to be comfortable with their decks, and I've seen a lot this, oh my gosh, Telvanni Conscription since the new season has started, and it is terrible. I mean, I've played 6 games in a row of just Telvanni Conscription, and I'm like, I'm done playing for the day. It's so frustrating because it's just Telvanni's a really good deck. And it's not to say that you can never beat Telvanni Conscription. There's decks around that, but it's definitely a really, really strong and powerful deck. And I get that. I get what you're saying, but Torvell Extortionist is just a good card. It allows you to get your 10 summons out, your 11 summons out too freaking early in the game. And I honestly think if used right, it's a pretty overpowered card. And because it's a really overpowered card, I'm surprised that people aren't using it, because you could summon Odaving pretty early with this. I mean, that's stuff like that where I'm just like, why are people not, excuse me.
I think that's a good point. I mean, like you said, I'm very surprised more people aren't using it, but I think it also is a symptom of in the meta decks, right, that green is a part of. So Halalu and Telvanni predominantly. Now Scout and Monk are not really popular right now. They're generally not super great. And you have Assassin, which really is almost sort of shoehorned into a tempo build. Now I can see this guy at the top end of a tempo assassin list, but quite frankly, that's competing with things like Giant Snake and Cliff Racer. So if you look at the decks that green is part of that are strong right now, they're either very, very aggressive and using Cliff Racer as sort of like a top end, in which case it's hard to tech Torvell Extortionist in, or they're very, very late game and control-y, aka Telvanni, which doesn't really have a spot for Torvell Extortionist because while it is sort of it's less of a control card, more of a tempo or mid-rangey card that wants to leverage its 7 attack onto either hitting face or killing things and getting Magicka to continue building a board, which Telvanni doesn't really do. Until it either hits Conscription or until it goes full out Nyx Ox combo, in which case you don't have room in the deck because you need to run the Doppelgangers, you got to run the Path Mages and all that stuff. So I think it's just more a symptom of the decks that are really good, the green are in right now, that everyone's playing doesn't have a spot for it. But I think the decks that will be coming up, so like the Archer decks and the Dagoth decks that are sort of always been on the fringe, like right now they're sort of like tier 2. I think that's where we'll see those sort of be revitalized by this card.
Right. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and remind the people who have came in here later. We will be we're gonna be having a question and Q&A at the end of the episode. So it's not that we're ignoring anybody. Just stay tuned and we'll go on and get there. We're just trying to get through our thoughts, and we might even answer the questions as we're going through this, but we'll get there. So we appreciate everybody being here. I'm just reminding anybody who came in late, we're gonna have a Q&A at the end. So Torvell, extortionist, really awesome card. I can't wait to see what it's being used in the future. Unfortunately, because I haven't made a green deck yet. Honestly, I guess I'm not too excited because people are going to be using it against me. But I'm excited to see what people will use out of it, and definitely the memes that will come from it.
Sure.
So,
yeah. It's a cool card for sure.
Next card coming up is the Hearthspire Scout. Before I'm gonna say my piece on this. Okay, I was wrong, dude. And everybody told me I was wrong. Everybody was like, I was like, man, this thing is gonna work in an aggro deck, man. I could not wait to say, Hearthspire Scout going straight into an aggro deck, because an aggro orc deck, and I was like, dude, this is gonna be really, really awesome. It's a 1-drop. If it was 2, I'd be like, okay, this is OP, but I was like, 1-drop, 1/1, last scrap. You could draw another card, which helps with the tempo of aggros because they run out of fuel so fast. And I was like, this is the card that you're gonna want to have. But then as soon as I put it into my aggro deck and it was round 5 and I drew Hearthspire,
yep,
I was like, oh my gosh, this card is not doing what I need it to do at all in an aggro deck. And I was even more excited because I was actually at Justin Larson's stream when he announced this card. And I was talking to CVH in the stream, and he said, yeah, it would work really, really good in aggro. I'm like, okay, community manager. Yeah, okay.
Try there, bud.
Right. So I was wrong, and I'll admit that I'm wrong here. I think maybe it would work good in a item deck, something that you're trying to shuffle through and get items. So even if you lose your tempo, by round 5 and you draw it and you drop it on the field, you can attack it straight into something else, hoping to get another item. Like, you're trying to build your tempo. I would really like to have seen this card with maybe, and I don't think any other purples have it. I would have really liked to see it maybe with a charge. So you drop it, you rush into something and kill it off, and you can draw something else.
Yeah.
But that's not really purple personality, but I think that would have made this card better.
See, I really like that. So what I was going to say is I think this card is really bad because of the weakness of Last Gasp. Like, we talked about that a second ago. Like, Last Gasp is really weak right now in terms of like the power level of cards, and the ability to how rampant like silence is. There's more silence out there right now, so like silencing a Last Gasp is really easy. And because it doesn't have an immediate impact on the board, right? Like, you can't use that when you're behind, right? Because it'll be a whole turn of your opponent doing something to you before it like gets to actually do anything. I was going to say, I think this card would be balanced if it said summon, draw a card, and increase its cost by 1, right? But I really liked what you said. I love the idea of like attaching charge to this card, and so that like if you run it into an enemy, bam, it goes away. That's brilliant. I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really good idea. Yeah, this card's super bad in general. Outside of like, I can see it being good in like the Abomination Scout that Petamax made. And there's just one more tool to add to an already silly deck that is everyone will auto ban when they see it in a constructed like tournament format. So yeah, sad that it isn't that much better. But
I would definitely say, in my opinion, that this is the worst card in the entire set. And I got overly excited for it, but I don't really see a use out of it.
I'm gonna reserve my worst card for a different one.
Yeah.
That tag for someone else.
Okay. Next card here is Green Pact Ambusher. My thoughts on Green Pact Ambusher is that you should really try not to summon it. I've used it in my aggro deck, and it's really not that bad using it for what it is, as a prophecy card. So you're getting attacked left and right, and you draw it as a prophecy, bam, you drop it. it dies. It's only got 1 life, but you block the damage, and that allows you to have an extra turn if needed. Another thing that I found very useful for it is, let's say your enemy has a full lane. I think this does respond to the meta, especially considering Televani conscription, in which they have a full lane, and so you're able to drop this. And because they can only summon things that are 2 or less, it gets rid of maybe another guard card that allows you to attack in that lane. I have at times summoned it for the 2-drop. Let's say, for example, I've equipped the crap out of another creature, and he's like an 8/8, but he's been taking damage, and so now he's like an 8/2. I'll drop this to try to give my 8/2 an extra turn, to try to do more damage to the face. But I think it's a good card. I think it's decent for what it is. For it being a 2-drop, I definitely say it's pretty awesome. But to actually summon it, I would say withhold from that unless circumstances say otherwise. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I haven't actually played with this one yet. So I've played with most of the cards so far, but I haven't played with this one yet. I really like this card. Again, I think this is a card that has very elegant design to it, and I think it has an intention to it in order to counter some of the siege catapult decks, where like 3 different classes are building siege catapult aggro decks, and they're filling up that lane. And this has a nice little counter to it. Here's the thing too, which is cool. I actually think that it isn't a bad turn to play in a matchup where you happen to look across the board and see that your opponent is running a slower deck than you, right? If your opponent is running like Telvanni or Tribunal or something, like this is super easy to remove, but you're also unlikely to get its effect off, right? Because against a slow deck that is only going to play actions to remove things, or it's going to be a while, it's going to take it till turn 11 to fill up a lane with conscription, I would just go ahead and play this. It's got 4 attack, that's if he sticks, then bam, he dumps 4 damage into your opponent's face. I think it's yeah, I like it, and I think that this is one of the cards, like I said, that I want to put some time into and see how I truly feel about it. But I think it's a flexible card. I like that it's prophecy. I even like that it's a guard. Although some have argued that the guard is actually a downside. I think that's what's making this not just a strict improvement on Greystone Ravager. So because Greystone Ravager, you can go and hide in the shadow lane and attack with it. This guy, you can't play it on curve without the, understanding that if you play it into a lane where an enemy is, they're going to kill it. I like this card. I just
I think to answer like 2 things, as far as trying to respond to a slower deck, I've only played this in an aggro deck, and I can't really think of another situation in which you wouldn't play it in. The issue with that is, of what I found in a lot of situations, is because of its limited health. Nearly anything can kill it. So you're dropping, Firebolt gone, 3 damage. Gosh, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's gone. People are, you also have the silence card, that does 2 damage. I mean, it's just, there's so many possibilities to get rid of it once it hits the board. And so dropping it on round 2, Firebolt can kill it. If they're also playing an aggro deck, they've killed it, and they know it's an issue, and they're going to want to handle that issue as soon as you possibly can. There's I can't think of the name of the card. Oh gosh, I'm so bad. There's another 4/1 card that isn't a guard, and you're able to drop it in the shadow lane.
Yeah, the Greystone Ravager.
Right. Okay, Gravestone Ravager. So it's nice to have that. I do think that this card should be a guard though, because of what it does, the flexibility with it. I'm not saying I would never drop it on a round 2. But the issues with dropping it on round 2 is, like I've said, there's so many ways to get rid of it that you won't actually use it for what it's intended to be used for.
I see what you're saying, and it is really easy to clear. One important thing to keep in mind, though, is it is really nice if you are playing against something like Tribunal, where they have a lot of removal tools, and you have a guy in hand that is not this character that you want to protect. You want him to stick around for a turn. What playing Green Pact Ambusher on turn 2 does is it says, okay, I'm putting this down. How are you going to remove it? Because how you remove it informs me as to what's in your hand. So if they play a firebolt, well, firebolt's out of your hand. That's the worst case scenario. You have no idea, no information on their hand outside of that. But if they play sorcerer's negation on it, then you know they don't have firebolt, because that would have been a more efficient play. And if you put this down on 2 and it goes to their turn 3, or if they goes to their turn and they hit the Ring of Magicka and play a crushing blow, then you know they don't have a sorcerer's negation or a firebolt. So like from that perspective, that's a more advanced tip, and that works for any minions, of course, not just this guy. But that's kind of how you would utilize it on a turn 2 play, is not expecting it to stick, but expecting it, if it gets removed, to inform you as to what's in their hand, what they no longer probably have in their hand, and then play around that. I will say I've seen people playing a single copy of these, and when I looked at it, I was like, well, why wouldn't you just play 3 copies? I still don't know that. I should ask someone why they're only playing 1 copy and not 3 copies. Maybe it's space. Maybe it's because the effect is unlikely to happen. So stacking 3 in your hand is, maybe not smart. But I've just noticed that in several lists. And so,
right.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's a really flexible card. And I think it's one of the most flexible cards in this set, and probably one of the most flexible cards in the game, just in general. And I love how much you can do with it. So, like you were saying, you might want to drop it on round 2 if you're willing to sacrifice it, but so you can see other people's hands. If you're not willing to sacrifice it, you got the prophecy, or whenever the lane is full for conscription. So it's just so flexible, and it's, I think it rewards smart play. I think it rewards people who are willing to actually think things through, not just be aggressive and drop something down and go hit in the face as soon as they can, using all of your magicka, and you're out of cards by round 5. I think it's rewarded for players who actually sit back and they go, okay, this is definitely Telvanni deck just by the colors and just by what they're dropping. So, maybe I should play this a little bit differently. And it's kind of flexible. Like I said, it's kind of flexible. So let's say you're playing against somebody who's running a let's just talk about the card in of itself. Works in an archer deck. You're protecting your archers with lethal by doing this, right? It works in a battle mage deck. Going ahead and put a ward on this, and it's got guard. They have to trade 2 things with it. They can't destroy it with crushing blow. The only thing they can get rid of it with is sorcerer's negation, or of course piercing javelin, or all those other kind of things. But I'll be honest, if I had javelin, I would not waste it on this card that early in the game.
Oh, so, absolutely not. Yeah.
So I think the personality of this card is just, it's beautiful, and I've enjoyed using it.
I'm excited to give it a try.
Next card up is the Destruction Tudor. I said this card was okay, and I still stand by the fact that it's okay, but I think it has too much health. That's just my opinion. Like, dealing with it, having to fight something that has Destruction Tudor is a pain, because it's a 5-drop 3/5, and I think this does shake up things because of its health. I think if it was a 4, I don't think it would, but the fact that it's a 3/5, I have a hard time getting rid of it. What are your thoughts?
I've had some fun with it. I don't think it's super good yet, but this is a card that scales with more cards being introduced to the game. I've been playing with a mage deck. It's not to brag, it has a ton of upvotes on Legends-Decks or Legends.decks. I have no idea why. I don't think the deck's that good. It's just goofy. But basically, like, it does let you spam spells at their face for free or for much less money. And so, like, anything that reduces cost, and generally, like, passives in general, like, should be kept an eye on. And this is a card that, while right now, it's not great. In 2 sets from now, when blue gets another damaging spell, and God forbid if they get another damaging spell that replaces itself in hand, whether it draws a card or spawns a copy or whatever, then this becomes scary, because I can tell you this card makes an Ice Spike free. So it's deal 2 damage, replace itself for free. If you get another card like Ice Spike, or if you get a way to clone Ice Spikes, in fact, I can almost see that in a Galen style card that would allow you to clone actions. So like Thorana lets you do it. Of course, Thorana's kind of slow. And I've had some games where this guy was really important to my win, and then other games where I'm like, I can't use this right now because I don't have any spells to use with it. If Mage gets more card draw, if Mage gets more cheap actions, this is a card to look out for.
Right, and the issue is too. I found with Destruction Tutor, while there are action cards, it's just a matter of the fact, like, even when you build an action decks just aren't strong. And having Destruction Tutor, she comes in about round 5, and even if you draw all action cards, then it's knowing when to use your action cards and spam them. So maybe Sparky Pants is hoping to develop action decks, and this is their way of kind of introducing it. And I would really like to see that, because I really think that would shake things up big time by adding action cards that are actually effective. But for right now, it's okay. It works sometimes it doesn't. And if I had a choice, I wouldn't put it in the deck because of its unreliability. But I hate dealing with it at the same time because it's a 5. It does 5, so I mean it's got 5 health, so not a lot of things are handling it as soon as I would like it to.
I think this is a card that you just build a deck around, as opposed to slotting it into something. Because you have to build a deck around using this card. So maybe it'll see some use in tribunals at a tribunal action deck with utilizing Endoral art, masterminds and cycling and lots of stuff like that. Right now, fun though, a lot of fun when it works. That mage deck that isn't very good, it is a lot of fun.
Next card up is Harmony. And I was wrong about this. And Dead Broke Nerd proved the entire internet that they were wrong about this as well. Harmony, a lot of people said bad things about this. I didn't say it was bad. I said it was okay. I said it was worth considering whenever you were in Arena. But I'm going to be honest, it's a pain to deal with. And I think the reason... Let's just go on and look at it. 2 for Prophecy, give all enemy creatures -2/-0 until the end of the turn. First off, you break a rune, now you're not able to do the damage that you want to do, which slows down aggressive decks, obviously. The second thing that's really good about Harmony in general is, let's say you're playing a mid deck, or a control deck, a tempo deck, whatever, and your opponent uses Harmony on you, they're getting rid of your creatures while their creatures stay alive. So it's... And I think the thing that makes it most effective, it's all creatures. It's not like a creature in one lane. It's not a specific creature, because we already have that. We have that with other cards. We already have other cards that go, okay, minus so much damage just for this turn in this lane or this creature. But Harmony is like, no, everybody, and only for a 2-drop. I think it's a really, really good card, and I think I underwrote it for what it is.
Yeah. What makes Harmony good is the fact that it's unlike Calm, unlike Cloud Rest Illusionist. This card says until the start of your next turn, as opposed to for this turn, right? So you play this on your turn, get some good trades out of it, and then throughout throughout the opponent's entire next turn, they still can't get value out of it, right? Because you're still getting value out of it because their guys have less attack and they're swinging in with less. They can't get the trades they want from those characters that are down. I will say, I still think that this card is a very powerful card. I think that this card is an amazing bubble card, but I think it is held back by the relative weakness of yellow outside of aggro decks. Yellow is great in aggro, but right now it has inefficient removal outside of really Tribunal. Like it's thriving in Tribunal because Tribunal has the tools for the early game removal out of blue and out of purple. But right now, yellow's relatively weak dual color combinations, especially its inability to play late game outside of Tribunal, is making this card not see as much play. Because if you're playing an aggro deck, Harmony is hard to slot in, right? And if you're playing Tribunal, you don't necessarily need this card. You already have a pretty solid base. Now, I've seen it show up once or twice in Tribunal. But the thing is, this would be great if you could get the Calm Execute removal package to be more efficient. But there's only one creature that goes off of the, 2 or less health, and that's Grizzly Gourmet. And I think that playing 2 cards to kill something is significantly worse than playing a lightning bolt to kill something. So this card ends up being effectively only used as an anti-aggro tool and not being used for the execute synergies. That's a little disappointing. I've been playing with trying to make Control Monk or something work. I'm still working on that. But the bottom line is this is not enough to make the Calm Execute removal package good. Not yet, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I think it's great in a bubble. I think it's just not going to see as much play yet.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with that. And like I said earlier, Harmony is really, really good. And I think a lot of people underwrote it for what it is. And you definitely called on it. So take praise in that. And then we'll be seeing Dead Broke Nerd. He's actually been streaming. He's playing a monk through this season on the ladder. So if you guys watch him on Twitch, you guys will be able to see this card. You're using this in your monk deck, correct?
I've got like 3 or 4 monk decks I'm working on right now. None of them are particularly good, but we're gonna ladder all season on monk, and if I don't make it, well, whatever. I will have exhausted all of my opportunities, and I will concede that monk is bad. But dang it, I want monk to be good.
Well, for the meantime, you may play Harmony, and you may be able to see it work, or you just may see Dead Broke Nerd stay on
this will be tested.
rank 5 forever. So I made it to just a side note, I made it to rank 4 on the skim of my teeth by playing aggro this season, and I got aggravated playing it. So I was like, I'm playing my sword just around 4, and I made it. I was like, I'm playing my sword, dude. I don't want to deal with this. So yeah, I might be another season of Sork for until I can get this aggro fixed.
Yeah, fair enough.
Next card is oh my gosh, my favorite card, Sword of Inferno. Gosh, I love this card. The flexibility, the power that, and I don't have any decks that can use it. Oh my gosh, but like I've seen it being used in so many other ways, and I called it. Oh my gosh, the first time I ever saw this card in play, I said on my YouTube video about the Frostspark collection, I said, I guarantee somebody will use this on a Daggerfall mage, and they're going to do a lot of damage to your face, and they did, and they got rid of one of my creatures, and Sword of Inferno, dude, I think it is the best card in the set for the right decks. I mean, you can't just use it in anything. I mean, you put it in an aggro deck, it kills off your creature. I was just reading on Reddit the other day, and I put this in Dead Broke Nerd's Discord. I saw this on Reddit. If your creature has lethal, it gets rid of the, even if it's a 5/5, if it's got lethal, it's gone, it's dead. But if it has Last Grasp, then you can use its Last Grasp ability. So Sword of Inferno is it's so flexible and really powerful for what it is as a 2-drop. And I think that it isn't so overpowered where it shakes up the game a whole lot, but due to its flexibility and the right decks, it's beautiful. I just love it. I want to see it being used more, and I think that the best decks to use it in would definitely be Battle Mage, because of all the wards that you can have with it. Even in an aggressive Battle Mage deck, you still will have probably some wards in there. If you got like a 3/1, you'll be able to get rid of that. Another thing I think it would really work good with is a Last Grasp deck. Unfortunately, like Dead Broke Nerd said, the Last Grasp isn't that effective. And the cool part about Sword of Inferno is it reinforces the effectiveness of Last Grasp. So you can put it on there, it kills it, you can use a Last Grasp. I just love this card, and I really hope to see more use of it. And I wasn't very descriptive into detail with that, but I'm just so excited about this card. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Make it more formal, man. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Sword of the Inferno is really probably... No, I'm going to say definitely the MVP of this set. This card is all over the place. Everyone's testing it. There's so many uses for it. It provides red as a color with the ability to have an early game removal akin to a Firebolt or to a Blackhand Messenger, right? I mean, you think about this is effectively a Blackhand Messenger. Now, yes, it comes with the downside of the creature has to live, right, to get that +2 attack, but you can still use it on a creature that would kill itself in order to kill something on your opponent's side that you absolutely have to get rid of. Additionally, you're right, it triggers wards. It also triggers Slay, and it can trigger Last Gasp. This card can be used in so many facets. We've seen it in Ramp Warrior, where basically they are using things like Arcane Venom Tongue, which is a lethal 4-mana 1/4, but has Slay, gain 1 max magicka. So you play down the Arcane Venom Tongue, you play down the Sword of the Inferno, you give the Arcane Venom Tongue +2 attack. It deals 2 damage to itself, but then it deals the damage, right? So because it is dealing the damage, that lethal will kill whatever it is, even if that creature has 17 health, right? Because it's the lethal creature itself dealing the damage, right? So then you not only kill it, but you get the Slay effect. So you get +1 max magicka. There are so many uses for this card. It's kind of ridiculous, and I love that it's bringing Slay, which has always been kind of a meme deck, back up to the forefront. I think this is not only the best card, but it's also, I think, the most interesting card in this set. I love it. I think everyone's loving it. It's all over the place. I can't go a game or two without seeing it. I am annoyed that it does help an already annoying deck in mid-battle mage, but I digress. Great card.
Yeah, definitely MVP of this set, like you said. Logic's like, I hate it.
Really?
I hate it so much. Well, you have the right to be wrong. So anyway, it's really good. All right, next card is the Death Hound. Deadbroke Nerd, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it for you. He thinks this is the card that you think is the worst, right?
Yep, this is getting the tag of worst card in the set. Don't like it. Don't want to play it. Makes me sad.
I give it the second worst in the set because it has its effectiveness. And I've seen it used against me, and this is how I can describe it. So Death Hound gets dropped into a lane, and I have my Young Mammoth, and I have a 2/2 out there, right? So in order to kill it, I have to do the 2 damage towards Death Hound, and I have to go kill it off. I also think that Death Hound can be used in a way that you silence it, so it's another 6 damage on field. So you have a 6/6, but that requires some flexibility, and I don't know. I would much rather have Corrupted Shade for that, because Corrupted Shade, even though it's only doing 5 damage, I drop down Shadowfen Priest, which is, my boy. Shadowfen Priest is awesome. You drop down Shadowfen Priest, and you can silence Death Hound, you can silence Corrupted Shade, and I just think in that situation Corrupted Shade would be better. And I've already said this, and I have seen a Death Hound, its power is only as strong as its health, and that remains. So if I attack it and it's down to 2 health, its damage is only 2, and there are way better guards for that cost.
Yeah,
I just don't see the use of Death Hound in a lot of situations unless you have intentions of muting it. It does help slow down the tempo, but those are only in some rare circumstances.
Here's what happened with the design of Death Hound, right? There's a very popular, albeit pretty bad, combination of things like High Hrothgar and Ring of Imaginary Might, which intends to take someone's defense and set their attack equal to it. So theoretically, you can make an OTK deck, right, where you boost the crap out of someone's defense with a bunch of weapons or items or whatever, and then you match the defense or the offense equal to the defense, and then swing for a huge amount of damage. They wanted to do this with Death Hound, but they chickened out of it. Okay, that is literally what happened, right? So they took Death Hound. They said, "Oh man, we really want to do something cool, like sort of like the Ring of Imaginary Might, but built in. Wow, Hearthstone has a card like that, and it occasionally sees play in combo decks. Like, why don't we do that? Well, here's the reason why. They gave it guard, which means you can't hide it in the shadow lane the turn before letting the combo off. And of course, it doesn't have charge. That would be broken, right?
I think if it didn't have guard, I think it would be.
Oh, this card, I would be playing the crap out of this card if it didn't have guard. I would be like putting it down the shadow lane, buffing the crap out of it, and then going face for like 17 to 30.
Right, and I honestly think like too, if you had I think one of the things I got really excited about, I even put a meme on it on the subreddit, got my free 20 upvotes from it. I said, if you didn't think Imperial armor, you're wrong. And I think that's what a lot of people thought when they first saw this was like Imperial armor, 12 damage. That's so cool. But the issue with that is it has guard. And so people, they can handle it. I really hope that they may put a patch. I don't know if they put a patch and they just get rid of the guard. And I think even for this the price, it's a 5 for 6/6, and it would make it a little bit more flexible. You could silence it, when you need to, so you can keep it on the board, and it can continue to do 6 damage. And
I think this card should be a 5-mana 4/4, whereas power is equal to health and no guard, right? Because a 5-mana 4/4, you have to buff him immediately or he gets lightning bolted, right? But like obviously he has to wait around to the next turn to attack, so you have to hide him in the shadow lane, you have to protect him, and of course being 6 right now, you're going to need to find a few more defensive buffs before he really becomes OTKable. I mean, you're losing 2 health for that 5 mana. He's easier to kill right off the bat. 5 mana 4/4 without the guard, and this thing is playable, and I'm making a bunch of meme decks with him. But as it stands right now, he's just a big ugly disappointment.
Yeah, especially for the latter. I wouldn't even use him in arena. 9 times out of 10, I wouldn't even pick him anyways, just because of how weak he is.
Yep.
All right, next card is the. Ooh, did I skip a card?
Looks like we're on Wilds Incarnate.
Oh, that's it. Okay, this is the last card. Wilds Incarnate. The memes. Thank you, Justin Larson, for all of the memes with Wilds Incarnate. Oh my gosh, this card is
praise the moose.
Pretty good, actually. I don't have anything really bad to say about this card. I wouldn't play it in a lot of decks, but the decks that it does work well for, it does good. I think when the deck first came out, I mean the card when the card first came out, draw a card if you have 4 runes, draw an additional card if you have 5 runes. I think a lot of people were saying draw a card if you just draw a card, and if you have 5, then you draw 2 cards. And I still kind of agree with that. Summon, draw a card. It adds its effectiveness, especially for its price, being at a 7/5/6. But even then, I still see the effectiveness. It like I said this before. If you put it in like a guard deck, you're protecting your runes. If you're being very aggressive, you're protecting your runes. So I don't know. It's good. I think it's just very straight to the point. Like reading the card, it tells you what it does. What are your thoughts?
I've seen it played in all-out aggro decks as a way to sort of, recoup your hand after sort of going all in on the board. The problem is, I don't think this card will ever be incredible. I think it will always be okay, and maybe it'll always be like a choice. Like, do I want to put Wilds Incarnate in here? Right? Because in an aggro mirror, it's hot garbage, right? In an aggro mirror, you usually end up racing, and this card sits in your hand as a 7 cost. You'll never it won't get to turn 7, won't even get to turn 6 usually in an aggro mirror where you're racing. Now, sometimes you'll get into an aggro mirror where your opponent says, "Oh crap, I don't have the cards to race, so I have to slow him down." And in that situation, you win 9 times out of 10. Now, there's still about a 10% chance that they are able to use their aggro tools to slow down your aggro tools, leverage a hand advantage, and come back. But it's hard to do. It's rare, and you don't want to be on your back foot when you're in the aggro mirror. So, normally it turns into a race. And even in both of those situations, Wilds Incarnate doesn't help you. So you're either closing out the game before turn 7 in an aggro mirror where the other aggro deck is sitting back and trying to defend, because inevitably they will not have the tools to do that. They're not a control deck, right? So you're closing out the game before turn 7 there, or you're in a race and you're closing out the game because one of you is going to kill each other by turn 5. So this card is good when it's good, and it sits in your hand and cries when it's not good. So this will always be a tech choice, and I think that I'm sure some deck will show up someday that this card is a staple in. Right now, I don't see it as a staple in any cards. I see it as tech choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool though. I love the visual effect. The big moose horns come up after you play it. I love it.
I really like if you have I think one of the coolest animations is when you drop it and then all of the runes kind of just shine. It'd be like 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5. I think that is beautiful. I really like the effect.
The visual animations in this set are great. Actually, the Outmer Dragon Knight deserves mention too. The Mage Monthly card, that one's got a really nice animation as well. I love it. They're really like putting some time into these animations. I think it's, people are noticing it.
Well, that concludes the Frostspark cards. So let's go ahead and move over to the Q&A section. So we got about, oh gosh, I lost it. Where'd it go? It's kind of being glitchy right now. I had the questions in the middle. Anyways, we do the, I'm gonna go on ahead and just add another one. So mind me while I do administrative stuff. We're gonna go on ahead and do the Q&A thing. So if you guys have any questions, go on ahead and ask us. If you have a question directly to Major Broski, go on and ask me, talking about myself in the third person. And if you have any questions to Dead Broke Nerd, go on ahead and ask him. Or if you just have questions in general, we'll answer it to the best way we can. We'll do this for about 10 minutes because we're already running at about an hour on the talk show. So we'll give about 10 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll move on to something else. So do you guys have any questions as I pull this up?
I did see. I pulled up the chat after you said Logic was complaining about the Sword of the Inferno. I did see JT Harp talking about Singleton, a use in Singleton. I actually think that actually might be a valid idea. Is trying to use Moose in Singleton.
So we have Professor Kapaya. Aside from what Nerd mentioned earlier, with shifting the meta with themes, what would both of you like to see change, added, or improved upon with the game moving forward? That's a really good question.
Yeah. You want to start, or you want me to start?
Yeah, you go ahead and start. I need some time to think about this one.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think from my perspective, one, more frequent balancing of overpowered cards. Two, I would love to see some underpowered cards get some buffs. That's something that Hearthstone did once or twice and never did again. And so most developers don't want to take the time to look at old cards and try to make them like old cards that are bad and try to make them playable. That's a mistake in my point of view. And I would like to see that remedied amongst some cards that just really fell flat. Try to make them a little more viable. That's basically a way of changing up the meta without actually having to design new things into the game. The last thing that I think would be nice is just a more frequent content release schedule and planning ahead. So like with Hearthstone, I keep comparing it to Hearthstone, not because I like Hearthstone more, but because Hearthstone has their crap together. Blizzard runs a tight ship over there, and I think that they should be looked to, to see how they run things. You have 3 big sets a year, one in like December, one in like March or April, and then another one in the summer. So you have 3 big sets a year. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows what the deal is, right? And I think that they need to get on a faster release schedule to bring those players in and keep them entertained. So those are my 3 things. And they actually, all those things ended up having to do with cards themselves. I think a competitive thing would be nice too, but that's a whole nother discussion.
I think what, just from my observation, I might be wrong in saying this, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to, with this Frostspark collection, they're like, hey, we're going to want to try to shake things up and respond to the current meta. I think a way of actually responding to the current meta is to stop focusing on trying to respond to the current meta. Try to focus on building things that you already have. Make Slay work again. Make things, make one, like I said earlier, make an action deck. That's not going to that's not going to, you're going to have more variety. Telvanni Conscription is good, but I would like to stop getting into 7 games in a row where I'm facing Telvanni Conscription. I want to make a deck that's versatile, that doesn't just respond to Telvanni, but I also want to make a deck that responds to other things as well. Something that where I go, okay, so really, I think when we talk about the meta, the first thing that comes into every single Legends player's mind is Telvanni Conscription. You don't even really think about anything else. And it's very unfortunate because it's kind of going, if you want to make it in the ladder, if you want to make it to legendary rank, this is the deck that you got to play. This is the easy way to do it. Not saying you can't do other things, But that's the easy way of doing it. And I really think if
Yeah, that and aggro warrior.
I think if aggro war, which I'm doing as well. But I think if Frostspark stopped, I'm not Frostspark. I think if Sparky Pants stopped focusing so much on trying to make a response and just started working on what they already have, like you said, buffing the cards that are weaker, working on decks that already exist and making them better. I would really like to see Monk become a great deck. I would like people to actually look at yellow and go, wow, that's a good choice to pick, just like any of the other cards. It's unfortunate that they even have a card where you can go, this is the weakest side of the set. I think all sets should be equal, but they do their own thing. I have never played Hearthstone, but I spent many years playing Magic the Gathering, and I know for a fact play Magic the Gathering, every single card color was equally powerful. I mean, of course, seasons, vary, but for example, if you played red, you knew you were playing aggro. If you were playing green, you knew you had strong creatures. If you were playing blue, you were trying to do illusion. You were trying to trick the other person and take their cards or whatever. Every card had its certain objective, and it did those things. And I understand with Legends, you have a little bit of flexibility where you'll have really, really strong cards here and there. And it's the same thing with Magic the Gathering. But I would really like to see where, instead of focusing on shifting the meta, create new metas so that there's more to work with. And that's something that I would like to see for the future of Legends.
For sure, yeah.
Logic asked, what needs to happen to make Mid-Monk great? Again. I'm gonna add that again part. That's a question for Dead Broke Nerd. I don't play Monk.
Yeah, Monk. So yellow in particular needs card draw that isn't based around playing an aggressive strategy. East March Crusader is amazing, but it requires you to break runes. So mid monk and control monk, East March Crusader is kind of a hazard card, right? You can't use it. The only other things is like Priest of the Eight, which forces you to have like a token synergy. You have to have 2 other yellow creatures on the board. So like they don't have the card draw to handle things outside of tokens or aggro. And then the only other problem is that I would like to see, I think if mid-monk was going to be good, they need to build on the existing synergies that they have, as opposed to making new synergies. So what does yellow have a lot of? They've got decent guards, they've got the ability to gain health, and they have some very strong single target removal. So what I would like to see in that situation, and they have the calm package, which I would love to see made good. And I think the way you make the calm, execute, Aerostorm, Harmony package good is by printing a 4-drop that has an effect similar to execute tagged onto an already decent body. We see cards like Blackhand Messenger, which come down that do 2 damage and then heal for 2. You've got a lot of cards like Shadowfin Priest that comes down and kills supports. And that brings me to my last point, which is that yellow needs a support removal card. Right now, I am 98% sure yellow does not have a support removal card. And if it does, it's outside of Edict of Azura, and that's Spell Swords. That's not yellow, that's Spell Sword specific. So for Monk or for Mage, and Mage is in the same boat as well, actually. So blue also doesn't have a support removal card. I mean, I think that you can make support removal cards that are very situational, like Dushnik Yal Archer is sort of a situational card. It's sort of understated, or Belligerent Giant, which is a 7-drop that you have to get to turn 7, but you can kill a support. So those are 2 things: support removal, card draw, and a way to sort of play off of the healing strategies or the minus health or minus attack strategies that comes with a decent body attached, aka a 4 or 5 drop that comes down and immediately has an impact. That's my thoughts. Sorry. I know that
it's okay.
I kind of went into rant mode there.
Okay, so next question we have from Niter612. What do you guys think about Slay Warrior? I mean, they got good cards for Slay on both ends. First thing that comes to my mind, because I play a lot of mid-sork, is the Bleak Coast Troll, and it works. I don't really know what you mean by Slay Warrior. Are you trying to say like a tempo, or are you trying to say like an aggro? I would say for an aggro, I wouldn't really want to play Slay Warrior, because you're just trying to you're trying to kill them as soon as you possibly can. But for something that's like a tempo or a mid, I could I could see its effectiveness. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think so. He might be referring to Warrior Seven's deck that he hit Legend One with, I believe, which is a Slay Warrior, sort of Ramp Warrior sort of thing, and it's getting really popular right now. I've seen it a few times myself. It's just that's probably the one deck that's sort of shaken things up more than anything else. That like an archetype that was, before sort of memey, and now it's a little bit more consistent, mostly because of sort of the Inferno. Um, it's pretty hard to deal with. I from the games that I've played with it, and I think Warrior Seven posted an almost perfect record with it. Of course, Warrior Seven's an amazing player, so like that should not be discounted. Um, I would need to see more on my end before I sort of got up in arms about it or overly concerned about it. I think like it seems to me what I've looked at, it seems to me like it doesn't have a lot of card draw. It seems a little susceptible to running out of steam. So, but I haven't played enough against it and I haven't built it yet. So I don't think I'm qualified necessarily to answer it, other than like I would not take the first week or even the first 2 to 3 weeks of a set release as reason to panic. I think you have to wait at least 3 or more weeks before things settle down, before you can look at something and say, "Oh my God, this thing is crazy or broken or whatever." That's sort of I would caution patience, even if there is that ramp warrior deck that Logic absolutely despises. I'm sorry, Logic.
Yeah. Um, so okay, I'm gonna go ahead and answer a little bit backwards here. I don't know, I'm gonna call him Chill. Chill said, "Good evening, you magnificent creatures. What are you discussing?" We're just discussing the recent Frostspark DLC. It's a first episode here, and we're just trying to talk about anything about Elder Scrolls Legends in general. We're gonna be doing that every single Wednesday at about 10 a.m. So 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 4 p.m. GMT. I don't want to say that wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and answer one more question. We've already kind of passed up the 10-minute marker here with Harp. He asked, has anyone spent time using Galen on this new sword to offset the self-damage? That is a really good question, and honestly, I have not seen it at all. But that is, wow, that's a...
I'm sure that's a combo that people would love to get off. Unfortunately, Galen is unique, but damn, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, wow.
That's a great combo for sure.
I think just bringing that up in general is a really good combo. So yeah. Anyways, I think that that concludes this episode. We're done with episode 1 of the podcast, the talk show. We will be coming back next Wednesday talking about it.
Looks like Hey People Chill has one more question. We could probably get that real quick.
We could squeeze that in. Oh, cool. In that case, may I ask the host opinions of the new purple cards? I don't think I've seen them used on the latter. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. We kind of I'm just gonna go ahead and give you in a summary. We said that Death Hound kind of sucks. We said that the Scout kind of sucks. And there's reasons behind that. Scout doesn't really do what it's supposed to do. I said that I think it would work really well if it had charge. I think it would work really well if it was in an item deck. But for what they had intended it on being, I don't think it's that good. And Dead Broke Nerd had said that the Hound should have not had guard. I think other than that, I think it would be a great card, and I totally agree with him on that. But if you want to see something more in depth, we're actually going to have this uploaded to YouTube later on Dead Broke Nerd's YouTube channel. So I'm going to go on ahead and put that here, DBN YouTube. I think I have that as a command, do I?
It did not look like it went through.
Hold up.
But keep in mind too,
there we go.
I think intentionally Purple was given more or given less good cards, because I think Purple right now is part of several of the most dominating classes. So Purple is a part of Warrior, which Warrior is probably the top aggro deck. It's also part of Telvanni, which is the top control deck. Of course, of which there are like 3 different entirely viable variants, right? There's 3 different variants of Telvanni sort of control. It's also part of Tribunal, which sees a lot of play in the competitive scene as a hard control archetype. So I think that they were probably very intentional about not printing something crazy good, and instead printing cards that are more combo driven or casual play intended for purple.
Right. Well, this will conclude the first episode of Legends Lounge. We hope to see you guys next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. GMT. And I hope to see you guys next week. If you guys would like to see the full video, go on ahead and check it out later on Dead Broke Nerd's YouTube channel, as I just linked here in the chat. Until next time, peace out, love life. Thank you so much for coming to the show.